Okay guys, when we last left off, so I had told you guys how I was a police officer, and through being a police officer I was able to take several drug classes, and those drug classes introduced me to psychedelics. The government doesn't seem to know a whole lot about psychedelics for the most part. They only deal in like the empirical data as far as it's concerned, and as far as we know, psychedelics seem to be relatively safe for your body. Specifically, things like mushrooms, salvia, DMT, doesn't seem to affect your body in any extreme adverse ways. So I decided that I would try them. That's the first drug I ever took. I've never, or I guess you can say I've drank alcohol. So if you can consider that a drug, depending on your definition of a drug, I've taken alcohol, and I've been drunk before. So I took mushrooms, and I had my first two trips, and my first two trips were in my house, in my living room, and I was watching things, movies, and they were with my girlfriend, and they were very nice. They were very nice, very low doses. First one was 1.5, second one was 2.5. So after those two trips, I realized I wanted to keep trying these and pushing it a little bit further and figuring a few things out. I started doing more research again. I had done research prior to trying the psychedelics, and then now after having taken them twice, I knew a little bit more, and I understood a little bit more about the research I was starting to look into and the people I was starting to watch. Things started to make a little bit more sense, and so I was doing a lot of research. I already knew set and setting was important, and I had worked with that during my first two trips, but now there was going to be a gap kind of between my second and third trip, a fairly long gap, because I wanted to get a hold of different strains. I wanted to get a hold of 3 different strains to see if the different strains had different effects. And I was told, on my research, some people had mentioned that they thought there were different effects on different strains, while other people said no, the active ingredient psilocybin is the same in all of them, and so therefore they're all the same. However, the people that were saying that the different effects, that were arguing for that, they were saying that it was because of the metabolites found inside of each individual mushroom type, what the different strains, I guess is what you call them. I don't know if that's the right word, different strain. They're all still Psilocybin cubensis, all the mushrooms I've ever taken, but anyways, so I found 3 different strains I wanted to try. The first one was Treasure Coast, the second one was Golden Teacher, and the third one was B+. From my research, I guess what they said was Golden Teacher was the basic one that pretty much everybody usually takes their first time. It's like the easiest one to find out of all the different types, and it's the one that basically a lot of the people in the 60s, that's what they were taking, was Golden Teachers. So it took a while for them to get to me. So while they were coming to me, I decided to convert my office. I had an office, a back room, bedroom that I turned into an office, and I now was deciding I was going to change it into a trip room. I was going to kind of add things into it, more decorative things. Before, I had like these shelving units with just my books on it. I had my computer. I had 2 computers that were set up. So it was a really like basic office room, and it didn't have a lot of like flavor or life. So I knew I wanted to kind of change it up to create an appropriate room that I could trip in constantly. consistently, not constantly, consistently. So I bought some shelves that I could actually screw into the wall instead of like a standing shelving unit. So I bought some individual shelves. I bought some things like I bought some animal furs. I bought a coyote fur. I bought a raccoon fur. I bought some antlers. I picked out my favorite books, are the books that the books that had the most like meaning behind them, or the most are my favorite ones. Like I picked out things like Moby Dick, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, things like Howl's Moving Castle, Interview with a Vampire. Really, really like strong, fictional, powerful books. I had 2 holy Bibles, including and then a third Bible that was just the Gospels. I bought some cups that were made out of they're made out of horns, like horned cups. They're like, I don't know, I guess they're kind of like Viking mugs. So those are kind of cool. I ended up buying. This took place over the entire time that these mushrooms were on their way. Basically, I was going out, to wherever, antique shops, Walmart, or any other store that I knew of that had any of these things, and I was going out and just finding things that I thought would facilitate the trip experience. So one of the things I got like it's a really nice I guess futon you would call it. It's a couch that can fold back and lay down, and so then it turns into like a little bed, and that turns out to be like integral because it's a huge staple of my trips. I also got some LED lights. I already had a fog machine, so I had that. I also already had some abalone shells and some seashells that I kind of put on a shelf, and I also took that abalone shell and turned it into a a smudge kit. Yeah, I bought some incense, things like that. What's another thing there? I bought like a, I don't know what you call it. I guess it's a little like planetarium type thing, nightlight. It's like a powerful one. You put it down in the middle of the room, and it illuminates the ceiling, and like you can change the colors, and they can rotate, and it also has some laser lights that it shoots out. It was also about this time that I found a hookah shop in my local area. And see, the interesting thing about that was I had deployed to Iraq when I was in the Army, like way back in like 2009, 2010 was when I was in Iraq. And while in Iraq, one of the things that was there is a lot of people smoked hookahs. And so I tried it once or twice, and I found out there was a local hookah shop, and I went down there, and I just went down there kind of to like just kind of see what it was about and everything like that. And I talked to the owner, and because he was there, and the owner was from Iraq, and he was from the same city that I was stationed in when I was in Iraq. And so that was so interesting. It was just like, wow, it was like kind of like one of those signs. You were just kind of like, oh, what, really? You're from there? And yeah, he's like, yeah, I was from there. And I think we even ended up talking about like a few specific locations. So I knew he knew exactly where I was talking about, and he knew I had really been there, and I knew he really was from there as well. And so it was quite interesting. Let's see here. I also ordered online a psychedelic painting as of like an astronaut, and but he's like stepping through a portal into space, and it's a a really pretty image to look at while you're on psychedelics. Let's see. I also ordered a Native American like hand woven blanket, which usually sits on the couch, and then usually when the girl's tripping, I'll be in my blanket, and usually she uses that Native American blanket. I also got a dream catcher, like kind of like a nice, just somewhat nice dream catcher. And one of the most expensive items I ended up getting was I ordered a bull skull from India with like hand carved, like this is basically, it's hand carved out the skull. The skull is just like a normal skull, but like someone decorated it by carving out a decoration inside the skull. So it's very, very pretty. And then obviously I got my computer, and the computer, I got a really nice sound system, very solid sound system, especially for such a small room that I'm in and everything. And it's those the lights are LED on the computer and on the speakers. So as I'm waiting for the mushrooms to get there, another thing I'm doing is I am constantly on YouTube looking for music that is going to facilitate my trips. This turns out to be really interesting because I go through several phases of listening to different types of music to try to get to certain like places. Like later on one of my trips, I found this really awesome Lord of the Rings mountain music. Like it's called like Misty Mountains, and it's on YouTube. And if you find it, it's great, absolutely great to trip on. You just I sat there in my chair listening to it one time, and I was smoking the hookah, and as I was going up, just felt like an old man just sitting on the top of the mountain. Is just a really, really beautiful feeling. So let's see. Okay, so I got a hold of the 3 mushrooms. They eventually showed up, the 3 different types, right? And I went through a couple trips here. They're not very specific. I don't really remember them a whole lot. I must have probably had about 2 or 3 trips in this point in time where I was trying the different types, and I was also trying to find good music. So at one point in time, I know I was on B pluses during one of these trips. This is like, we'll just say it's like 3 through 5. Okay, we'll say trips 3 through 5 here. At one point in time, I think I was on B pluses, and I was sitting in my computer chair, and I had on some music that was a little like alien. I think the actual like the name of the YouTube video was like psychedelic, I don't know, new age, I don't know, something like that. It was just very electronica, and the image on it, a lot of those YouTube videos, the images are just like a flat image. Some will be slightly moving, or some will slightly change colors, but this was a flat image. And as I'm sitting there in the chair and I'm watching the screen, this is still, I wasn't too big on closing my eyes for long stretches of time. So basically I'd sit in my chair, I'd smoke my hookah, and I'd listen to music. And as I listen to music, I'm watching it, and so yeah, I'm seeing this image. It's of like some planets, and there's like a person sitting on the edge of the cliff looking up at the planets and everything like that. And it's a flat image that's not moving. But I was, me being on the psychedelics, I'm watching it, and it looks as if the stars are rotating, the planets are rotating around, and it looks as if the person's moving. It looks as if the person's kind of like, just kind of walking like back and forth or something like that instead of standing still. Or, not like any extreme amount. It's like not like they're walking all the way across the screen or anything like that. But it just looks alive. The image looks like alive. And I had to like, at one point in time, I kind of like snapped myself out of it, and just to make sure that it was a still image, and that like that YouTube wasn't wasn't playing a video, I actually had to like go back and forth in the video and click forward and back to see if the image was moving, and it turns out the image was not moving. So I do that quite often. Sometimes I'll click on a video for these music, and sometimes these videos will have moving images, and sometimes they won't, and so I have to be careful as I'm watching them, and I'm sitting in my chair to see whether or not they're actually videos or if they're just still images. Anyways, so during these 3 trips, I ended up learning a couple things. I ended up learning, for one, you do have, while you're tripping, you have the ability to wake up. You have the ability to kind of like snap out of it for a minute, like just to do something. Specifically, like I usually do it when I've got to go pee, so I'll snap out, and I'll be able to control my body enough to walk into the bathroom, go pee, and come back. And usually that causes stimulation, which ends up changing up the trip a little when you get back, because you're looking at things from a different perspective. I figured out that the strains do have different effects. Now, the ones I got weren't necessarily the best way of discovering this, but Treasure Coast was the major indicator. So when you take Treasure Coast, the visuals are very much minimalized. Especially closing your eyes on Treasure Coast, you don't get the array of colors shooting across your field of vision like you do on some of the other ones. Treasure Coast, what it does is it mostly enhances your emotions. Your emotions get kind of wild, kind of wacky, kind of all over the place, and it can lead to some seriously disastrous effects. Treasure Coast is kind of a hard one to deal with, and frankly, because you do get emotional highs and lows on some of the other psychedelics as well. So I think actually Treasure Coast is probably the prettiest out of all the ones I've grown, and certainly some of the ones that I haven't grown as well. I've seen lots of pictures of different ones, and Treasure Coast is probably the prettiest one, but it's certainly not the most visually stimulating one. So I noticed on Golden Teachers there seems to be a large time I don't know what you call it. Time just seems to slow down on the Golden Teachers, and sometimes to an extreme. And I'll get into that when I get to my next major trip that I fully remember, which I'll probably describe in the next podcast. Well, no, I guess I'll probably describe it here in just a minute here after I get through these ones. So B pluses seem to have a lot more visual stimulation as opposed to the Golden Teacher and the Treasure Coast. B pluses were a little bit more visual, but it was still light like Golden Teacher. Now those are the first 3 I got, and I had enough to trip several times. So I'm doing it. I'm watching the videos too, and at this point in time, I still hadn't found any necessarily great videos to watch and music to listen to on YouTube. Like I said, I'd only close my eyes for about half the time. The other majority of the time, I'm actually watching the music, or whatever. I'm watching the video that the music's playing on. I'm usually staring at. I'll get up and I'll actually stare at my animal furs. It's really, really neat to watch the coyote fur, because it's very colorful. It's got a lot of reds, whites, blacks, grays. It's just a beautiful fur, and you can see all the detail in the fur, and it's very, very beautiful. I also like to watch my my curtains, you know, because of how just they've got these like geometric shapes and patterns on them and everything. They're very, very pretty. They're like this blue and silver color. So I like to look at those a lot. That painting I told you guys about a little bit earlier ago, my psychedelic painting with the astronaut on it, that was often quite good to look at because the stars in the background would start moving. You know, basically the whole painting would start moving. You'd start to see these colors that are on it. It's a very bright and neon colored type painting. So as you're staring at it, yeah, you can start to get a little lost in it. So let's see, we're on these trips here. What else is going on? Oh yeah, back to the music. At this point in time, I was still just trying to look for, basically I was looking at psychedelic musics is what I was looking at. And it was quite often good, but there was a few times where it was a little too alien for me. I'd hear a sound, just a music type that was going on, and it would just sound a little too funky, you know, just a little bit too, I don't know, alien's just the best word, you know. There's like such a wide range and variety of electronic musics nowadays that you could pretty much find anything you want. And so, okay, about this time, I go, me and the girl, so here we're going to get into my next profound trip, which for the sake of this, we're just going to call trip number 6, which it might not be. I might be getting some of these mixed up in how far along they were, but this was the next big profound trip I had here, and it's kind of an important one, because it was basically an archetype inside of an archetype. It was like it was such a fun, wild ride here. Oh, I had one of the things I had on one of my trips, before we get to this, it was probably trip 5 if I had to guess, because it was the last one before then. I took the I took the Golden Teacher, and I had a good night and everything like that, but I had taken them really late in the night. I took them probably about midnight, so it was probably about 5 o'clock I was getting ready to go to bed. And one thing I noticed is the size and the shape of things in my house were changing. For some reason, furniture seemed either a lot bigger or a lot smaller than it should have been. Like I went out into the kitchen real quick just before, I thought the trip was over, to tell you the truth, because I felt pretty good. I felt good enough to stand up and walk around and everything like that. And so I go into the kitchen and I look at the stove, and the stove just looks huge. It looks massive. Looks bigger than me. And I go into my bedroom, and the same thing with like the bed, the dressers, and just everything looks just way Alice in Wonderland, basically, is what it looked like. And that's important because so on the 6th trip here, the girl and I get together and we decide we have some friends. There was a guy that had taken psychedelics in the past, and I didn't know that, and so we all get together, him, his girlfriend, and then me and my girlfriend. We actually go to a hotel because it's where they were going to spend the night, and so we go there to meet them and everything. And we got Golden Teachers with us, and actually I gave them Treasure Coast. So him and his girlfriend, I gave Treasure Coast. Me and my girlfriend, we got Golden Teachers, and I think I had 5 grams on me, and so I split that with the girlfriend, and I probably got 3.5, and the girl probably got 2.5 if I had to guess. Yes, or maybe she got about 2, and it must have been more than 5 because it was probably a 3.5. It was probably my biggest trip then, because my other trips I still stayed kind of low. I still stayed at 2.5, 3. I wanted to see the different effects, and I didn't want to go too far yet. I heard the heroic dose was 5, but I hadn't built myself up to that. So anyways, I took 3.5. She took 2, they pretty much did the same, the girl and the boyfriend. And so it starts off, I'm kind of one of those guys. I like to just sit and chill, and that's kind of my MO. Anybody that comes over to hang out at my house, basically, I like to sit in my chair, talk, and just kind of enjoy the scenery. So I sit down kind of in the corner next to, the bed. I'm sorry. I lay down in the bed first. I laid down in the bed for a little while, and my girl has a ton of energy. Both of the girls have a ton of energy. I don't have much energy at the time, and so they're running around, and someone had brought bubbles, and so the girl was playing with bubbles and everything like that. As I'm laying there on the bed, I remember I got this pretty big feeling like in my chest. It kind of like felt like my chest was kind of like opening up, and I remember closing my eyes, and I went into this room, this geometric room, pretty standard of a DMT trip type explanation of what the room was. And then so I was laying there for a second, and girlfriend's playing around with bubbles and having fun with the other girl, and eventually I got to get up and I got to like kind of move over. So I move over into a chair that's a little closer to the air conditioner. And as I'm sitting on the chair, the girl's coming over, she's talking to me, and she goes back over and is playing around and talking with the other girl and whatnot. And I'm sitting there. I close my eyes again, and I go into basically space. I start flying around space. I close my eyes, and I'm flying around space. And real short-lived, though. It was only a minute or two, and then I opened my eyes back again. So right there, I knew I was on a pretty good trip. This also showed me, and I figured a little bit more out about this later, is not all batches have the same amount of psilocybin in them. So you grow a species or something like that. When they grow, depending on conditions and everything, and the batch could turn out really, high in psilocybin or a little lower in psilocybin. So just because you take 3.5 grams doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the same amount of psilocybin inside those grams every single time. So this was a really good one. These were very, very potent for the most part. So they go outside, and this is when I eventually get up, and I'm standing just outside, and I'm staring at the trees, and I'm looking at this hotel is an exterior hotel. It's not like inside. You don't go down the hallway to get to your room. Instead, you're just straight outside, and we were facing like a little courtyard. There's a tree and there's a pavilion out there, and there's nice big bushes with like flowers on them next to us and everything like that. And so it's actually quite pretty, and the area is really, really well lit because it's kind of like downtown-ish area. Anyways, it's not a incredibly out in the woods type area. It's in a decent part of town, and so I'm standing outside, and I'm just kind of looking at the bright colors. Like across the street, there's a fast food joint, and they got a pink sign and pink neon sign. And the neon sign was just huge, and I could see it, even though it was like behind the tree, and I could still see it. So my visual acuity was like jacked up, and I'm looking up at the building, and the building just starts growing, and it gets really big, and the tree gets really, really big, and the pavilion gets really, and so basically it's like I'm back in Wonderland, like I'd said the trip before, but now this is closer towards the beginning of the trip or the middle of the trip, and I'm in Wonderland. I'm like, wow, this is this is crazy cool. I was super, I wasn't feeling necessarily great and everything. I kind of felt, I guess, melancholy. I don't know, I just kind of felt like I was just there. Like, emotionally, there wasn't much going on, but man, I was definitely intrigued and excited of the effect I was getting, staring around at these, this giant building and this, these misshapen trees and bushes and flowers, and so it's pretty late at night too. I mean, it was probably easily past midnight. So those are I'm kind of looking around, and they're having fun and everything like that, and eventually the other guy and his girlfriend go inside. Oh, she ends up, once again, because they were on Treasure Coast, she ended up, the other girl, having a little bit of an emotional moment. She started crying and everything like that, and I don't really know what happened on her part. It wasn't bad or anything. I mean, basically her and the guy went into the hotel, laid in their bed and just kind of laid there. But so me and my girl, we decided to go ahead and kind of like walk around. I was kind of frozen in the moment for a minute there when I first came out of the door and I was first looking at all those pretty bushes and stuff. As I was there, I kind of felt like I didn't want to move for like a really long time. And I even told that to my girlfriend when she came on up, and she's like, okay, hey, you want to walk around or something like that? And I said, yeah, but hold on a second here. I kind of feel like I have to stay here for a second. And it was one of those things, I don't know, just call it like a divine voice almost, just telling me, hey, just kind of sit here for a second, kind of take it in, kind of see what's going on, look at all this. And so as I was looking around, there was a new construction, a large hotel being constructed just behind the hotel that we were at. And so I could see things like dirt mounds and building materials and stuff like that. And I said, okay, let's go over there and everything. So as we're going there, I started thinking a lot about Jordan Peterson's, talks about the archetypes and stuff like that. And as I was looking at it, it was almost like we were going on a little adventure, deciding to actually wander away from our hotel room, me and the girlfriend. And so like we walk over there, and I'm looking at this mound of dirt, and to me, all of a sudden, I see like a desert. I see like a giant desert. It's like a miniature of a giant desert, and like I can see like all sorts of details in it and everything like that. And it just looked like I had like I was like flying over the Sahara Desert or something, even though it was just a little dirt mound in a construction yard, and so we start wandering a little closer to the hotel. We gotta like jump over like a little like creek, and we're looking at it and everything like that, and I'm starting to piece it together, and I'm starting to make this journey in my mind. And because as we get underneath the awning at the hotel, I'm like, okay, this is kind of like a rest spot, like we kind of fled, we went over here and we fled from the desert. Now we're in a little rest spot. And I even start talking to my girlfriend. As I'm talking to my girlfriend, I'm starting to explain to her like Lord of the Rings. I'm starting to explain to her like the journey that Frodo goes on, or the journey that Bilbo goes on. They leave the Shire, which I was making the comparison to. That was our hotel room. And then we left there, and then we ventured out, and we had a little bit of a difficulty. We had to cross a desert, and then now we're at a resting spot, and I compared it to Rivendell. I'm like, this is like Rivendell, we're at a resting spot. And then I look across, the next place I want to go. There's like a light shining underneath an awning far off in the distance. It was really just a block away, but I mean, in my eyes, it looked like it was, miles and miles away. And the girls all she's probably seeing about the same things I was seeing, at least from talking to her about the experience. I believe she was basically in the same mindset and saw the same things I was seeing. So we're like, okay, well, we gotta make it over there, and so we start crossing. We have to cross like a little like alley roadway, and then we're walking down a parking lot, and to the left of us there's the creek is filled, and there's a bunch of trees, and it's incredibly green, but it's a little darker, just before you get to that light area. And as we're walking, the girl sees a cop drive by, but he's on the other side of he's like on a road that's off to the side, and he just drives, he doesn't even see us. Like we're way too far for him to see, and it's way too dark where we're at for him to actually see us. But he drives by, and so she got kind of a little scared, and she's like, oh, we got to turn back, we got to go, and I sit there and I explain, oh, no, this is it, this is perfect, this is like the moment, of where you turn back, and that where you have the opportunity to turn back in the journey, but then you decide not to. I said, no, we've already made it this far, you can't turn back now, we got to make it there. So it was really great, just really archetypical stuff, man, just like straight out of the Lord of the Rings, like if you're following along the journey, and and then right there at the end, right before you get to that, we got to that light underneath the awning, there was like a fence that we had to climb over. It was our most difficult obstacle, that we had reached so far, and so she hopped right on over it, but me, I had to struggle to get on over it, and it was just kind of funny. And then so we get underneath the light, and underneath this awning, and it turned out to be another hotel, funnily enough, and we just kind of stood there underneath the light for a minute, and it felt good and everything, and I felt like we had accomplished something. I felt like we had gone on a journey. We had reached our goal. But now it was time to go back. And this is the interesting thing too, and this fits all the archetypical stuff as well. And just like in the Lord of the Rings, Frodo goes back to the Shire, and the Shire's not the same. Or he can see the places he's been before at minimum. So we walk back, and as we walk back, the things do look different. The creek with all the grassy leaves and trees, no, it doesn't look the same anymore, and it looks less menacing, it looks less dark right there at that point, and we get back to Rivendell, and it's our spot for what I called Rivendell was this awning for the building being built, and we get back there, and we're kind of standing there, and it's a good reflection point, and I say, look, you can see everything everywhere we've been. And right there at that moment, and this was a really good visual, I actually could see myself and her, even though I'm standing underneath that awning, I could see us over at the doorway to our hotel room, and I could see us walk across, go over to that little desert mound, look at the desert mound. I could see us walk over to where we were at, and then I could see us walk down the way. Basically, I could just see the whole journey being played out in reverse, or not in reverse, but just being played out again. So that was a crazy good visual. And as it was going, I was also describing it to her. I say, look, you can see us right there. You can see us looking at the dirt mound. We noticed this and that and that. And I was just replaying it back for her, and it worked so well. Just so, man, it was amazing. And so then we were like, okay, well now let's go back over there. And we had already decided, me and her, that we weren't going to actually sleep in the hotel. We were going to leave the other two, and what we were going to do is, once we sobered up, just drive back home to my place. And so we're still high, and we don't want to bother them inside the hotel room, so we decided to sit in my car. Hindsight, this is probably a really bad idea, Being a cop, I know that to arrest somebody for drunk driving, all they have to do is be in the car and be drunk. It doesn't matter if they're actually driving it or not, funnily enough. But anyways, so we get in the car, and there's a lot of moisture. Like, the whole night it had been, like, it had been misting, basically. It wasn't raining necessarily, but it was sprinkling or misting. So there's a lot of moisture. So we get in the car, and I had a Camaro, a 79 Camaro, and so this fit right in with the whole heavy metal theme that I had gone with on my first trip. And we're sitting in the car. It's a white Camaro too, and we're sitting in there. She's sitting on the driver's side, and I'm sitting on the driver's side. She's sitting on the passenger side, and everything starts to slow down, and I mean to an extreme. I look on over at her, and she's basically growing like old. She's growing like really, really old, even though she's the same age as me, and we're in our mid-30s and everything. I look over at her, but for some reason when I look at her, she looks like a 60-year-old. And then all of a sudden I realized I was like starting to become like a 60-year-old. Like somehow we had like grown old and grown like really, really old. And then like right there I like told her, I said, we're dying. I said, we're dying, and here we go. This is the archetypical journey right here. This is the shamanic tradition right here coming out. I'm dying, she's dying, time's slowing down. And what happens is time slowed down right to a crawl. Like, I felt like I was stuck in eternity, and it lasted for forever. I mean, like, it's so hard to describe. This is one of those things that, geez, I mean, if you haven't been on psychedelics and you haven't experienced this, it's almost impossible to describe. Time literally stopped. I was literally frozen in time, and my eyes were open, and I'm looking at the water droplets on the windshield of the car, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, just the most beautiful, detailed thing you could possibly see. Just all these water droplets, and you could just see them kind of like moving around. They're like some are a little thicker, and they're falling down, and then as I'm staring at those things, and it becomes more beautiful, time just freezes, like just dead on freezes. And she's frozen too. She's not moving, she's not talking or nothing. And so we both died, and we're frozen and stuck in the middle of time. And it was so cool. I mean, like, I was like at the time, like I said, my emotions were really, really deadened. I was very melancholy, but like on the inside, in my mind and in my heart, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is the most amazing transcendental thing I've ever felt, and so anyways, slowly time starts to come back. First kind of slow, it's very, very slow at first, where I can start seeing the water droplets moving again, and then all of a sudden it just plops back in, and I'm sober all of a sudden, I mean, just that quick. Probably in the span of like 15 minutes or so. She wakes up, I wake up, and I sit there and I kind of stretch. I'm kind of reconnecting with my body. I'm like, okay, I think we can, I know there's a gas station right down there. Let's drive there. I'll go pee, we'll get some like chips and some drinks real quick or something like that, and just make sure we're good to drive home, because driving home was a good 15 minutes away, but so I wanted to make sure I was actually sober and good enough to actually make it home. So we just drove, through the parking lot, around the corner, and then we're there at the gas station and everything. I get up, I stretch, walk around, and yeah, I'm completely sober. And I talked to her right then and there, I mean, I got it all out for her, like everything that I experienced. And like I said, I believe she was experiencing pretty much all of that same stuff, and she agreed. Anyways, we just talk about it, we just go over it, the whole, how we felt like we had died, and that we'd grown old and died, and time froze, and yeah, it was that was quite amazing. And I ended up learning more about that in the trips to come. We'll get to a few more trips here next episode. We still got a long ways to go. I mean, I'm nowhere near the end of the trips here, but so we'll say that was about trip 6, which it might have been a little bit more, but it was about trip 6 that happened. A very, very big stepping point, and it just showed me a lot of more things. Man, it showed me a lot more things. That time thing was huge. The fact that time could freeze like that, and that's an effect that I started to take advantage of in later trips. So I learned how to do things like control it a little bit better, depending on what dose you're on, and in your set and setting. I'll just say this, like one of the other trips there's been several trips that me and the girl have had where we come into the trip room, we shut the door, and when we trip, we end up like just basically floating around space, me and her. It's like the room is like our little rocket ship, so to speak, and the room's just flying through space, and nothing else exists except for me and her, and we're just floating through time and space. And some of these have lasted for years. I mean, not literally. The trip is still only 4 hours, and when we come back, it's obviously only been 4 hours. But while we were on the trip, it felt like we were out there in eternity, and it felt like it had been years before we came back. So those are incredible trips, and we'll get into some of those later. But for now, I think this will end this little episode here. I'm also going to make another bonus episode here talking. This is coming up. This will be the next thing I do. Is I got to make another bonus episode where I need to describe more physiologically what's going on with the mushrooms, because I realized I talked to my parents, or I had mentioned I had told my mom that I was taking psychedelics, and the second time I was able to actually sit her down for just a minute to talk to her about it, I just realized she doesn't have any clue. She just believes all the myths, that came from that Ronald Reagan era. Drugs are bad, and these whole things about people jumping out of windows, and just such garbage. I did a little bit of research into trying to find any credible story of somebody actually jumping out of a window on psilocybin, and it just turns out like there's just no credible source to say it actually happened. It's quite intriguing. So anyways, thanks all for watching. Uploading these on YouTube, so if you made it to the end here on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, something like that. Anyways, thanks.